could just go on more disads. You could just turn some of the disads and put limited defense on the other ones to force them to go for some disads or something, which I think would answer back most of the.
We're in agreement, right?
Huh?
You agree with the point I just made?
I don't think so.
What?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No.
I said the problem with conditionality is it doesn't allow you from to generate offense.
Oh yeah, yeah. But I'm just saying that would also answer back the we could just run more disads thing. Because you were saying before that the answer to time skew is inevitable, we could just go on disads instead of count, and that would still waste your time.
I see. All right, sorry. So you're saying the impact to can't generate offense is time skew, and time skew causes problems with fairness, and fairness means no education. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that could be part of it, yeah.
I'm with you. I just think it seems much quicker to me to say the inability to generate offense means you can't come up with reasons to vote for your side, and that's unfair. I just leapfrogged the time skew issue and said that in itself is unfair. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're agreeing on that for sure. I don't think you need the time skew argument. Just if you say I cannot generate a reason why you should vote for me, I think most people would agree that's not a good form of debate. If one side can generate reasons to vote against you and you can't come up with any reasons to vote for you, that doesn't seem like a very fair debate, does it?
No.
You all
or
agree?
the other side could just be really good debaters.
Do what?
Or the other side could just be really good debaters. I mean, if you take like a quasi-tabula rasa approach, is that at the end of the debate, the goal is to have one side say you can't vote for the other side because of whatever reason.
You said tabula rasa, right?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Is that there are no presuppositions before the debate.
Yeah, literally Latin for blank slate.
Yeah.
And that's the way you think people should judge, or are you saying that someone could say that?
I think it's a good idea, but I mean, in that case, a lot of the times the problem is that people don't frame the debates, and
Yeah.
the judge doesn't have it.
By the way, just a minute, did you say you were in that critique group?
Yeah.
Are you using tabula rasa as a justification for criticisms? Do you use it as a Okay, that's good, because it's an enlightenment thought. Like, it's the idea that in order to be enlightened, you need to be free from restraints and privilege, reason, and rationality of everything. I do sometimes hear debates where people say, tabula rasa, it's a strange contradiction, in fact. See how I'm using the lingo? So that inability to turn offense, the question that I'm still asking though, is there any difference, what is the difference between dispositionality and conditionality? If there are many interpretations, I would like to hear them. So far, I spotted you what Lingle already told you, so I haven't heard any explanation. So, rock it till we drop it. Doesn't mean anything.
Sounds all right.
Just drop in there, yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure if this is correct, but is dispositional like the counter plan can concede the perm or something like that? Like conditional, you don't have to concede the perm or anything. You can just drop it. Like dispositional, you can concede the perm, and then you can use it with the plan.
Yeah, they relate to what constraints the negative has on advocating the counter plan, right? Like somehow that word advocate, that's a magic word in debate. Like we imagine that when you say, I'm advocating this counter plan, that signifies something very particular. The argument for non-conditional counter plans is what? Do you advocate the counter plan? Yes, we advocate the counter plan. Yes, absolutely. So you're saying the constraints on the negative choosing to advocate or not advocate are somehow different with dispositionality than they were with conditionality. Is that correct?
I guess so, yeah.
Okay. I agree with you 100%. That's a great way to start this. Can you explain to me what the difference is in those two visions are? Has conditionality become so acceptable that nobody uses it? Is it real? Yeah.
I guess you can.
Yeah, you rarely hear conditionality.
Do what?
I rarely hear conditionality debated.
Really?
I have a question though. If you are affirmative, if you're the first affirmative and you're cross-examining the first negative, could you potentially like set this up in a way where you ask, do you advocate your counter plan?
Yeah.
And if they say yes, then just pin them on that and say that that means that they're unconditional. Or would that be something that you could do because they're advocating the counter plan? This means that the judge's ballot is on the negative string by that advocacy.
No, it's pretty well accepted that the standard question is what is the status of the counter plan?
Right, but I mean, if you didn't ask that standard question.
I mean, they're going to advocate the counter plan until they kick it, so.
I think if I'm judging that debate and the negative says it was conditional all along, I would ask, why didn't you ask the status of the counterclaim? Maybe if you, you're basically saying, can I trick them in cross X? And I love the idea of tricking them in cross X, but I don't know that they'll fall for that particular thing.
Or judge will.
For the disposition, for the D word and counter thing.
Yeah, dispositionality.
My view of it is that dispositionality is saying that we're not conditional until you say we can't solve, or until you say we have no, like, until you take away our,
We're not conditional until you say we can't solve?
yeah.
What does that mean?
As in, we'll stick with this and we'll keep it unless you say like, we end ourselves with it. I mean, unless you say like, we can't even solve your plan, then we'll just throw it away. So even if you turn it back to us and say that that's going to be the death of us, fine, we'll take that. But if you say we can't solve, then we'll finally drop it.
So the status of the counterclaim changes?
It's not more so that the status is, well, it's like saying we're going to, it's like, it's yes, but not really. It's like saying we're going to say we're not conditional unless we start losing.
Then you were always conditional, right?
But in the same aspect, it's a way to get out of conditionality in itself, which was also said in the speech earlier. So you use it as a way to save yourself from conditionality, bad arguments, by saying, oh no, we're not conditional, somewhat.
Okay, and that's your interpretation of dispositionality? Okay. I think you might be a little bit off in that it seems like the status changes as the round goes by. Can I go ahead and tell you the argument that Roger Salt makes in the limited conditionality question? Yes, he does say dispositionality is problematic because it's not well defined. He basically makes an analogy. I'm sorry, go ahead.
What if conditionality is like when the counter plan they no longer advocated, or dispositionality is that they still advocated, but they're just going to permit or just let it permit. Dispositionality is more like a negative argument to me.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. It's an argument for why limited conditionality can be acceptable in some instances. But the idea is that the counterplan functions in the same way that a disadvantage does. In other words, if I ask you, what is a counterplan, what would you tell me? This is a really easy question. What is a counterplan?
Disadvantage that saves itself?
What?
A disadvantage that solves the plan?
That doesn't always have to solve the plan.
Or a plan is better.
What?
A plan that is better than the affirmative plan.
That is better. Maybe.
It's an alternative policy option or some other counter advocacy that has a reason why it's better, which is the net benefit, right?
Yeah, very close in there. It's a proposal that is a reason to reject the affirmative. So that's a real simple, straightforward answer. Sorry, go ahead. Did I cut you off?
No,
What were you going to say?
I guess it's not really something that like solves for the affirmative. I guess it can solve for the affirmative. It chooses not to. I just think that it's more than one definition. I don't think it's something that just solves for the affirmative. I think it can outweigh the affirmative, or it can solve for the affirmative,
Sure.
or it can solve for a portion of the affirmative,
Sure.
and stuff like that. So I guess it's like different solvency mechanisms that still did not a reason not to vote for the other side.
Sure. What do you think about my definition? It's a proposal which is a reason to reject the affirmative.
It's a simpler version of what I said. I was specifying.
So you could solve the affirmative, you could provide a net benefit. It could be a uniqueness.
You can solve the
counterclaim.
affirmative through a different way. Not the same exact way as the affirmative.
It doesn't have to solve the affirmative though, right? It could be a
I know, it
uniqueness
doesn't. That's why I said you can solve for a
A
portion.
uniqueness counterclaim, right? Don't pass the whatever bill that's going to kill his popularity. And that could be the reason to reject the affirmative because it keeps something with politics in equilibrium or something like that.
Wouldn't it be saying like it's a proposal, like for a reason to reject the affirmative becomes like vague, because isn't that the equivalent of an alternative?
What?
Like on a critique, isn't that the same thing as an alternative? A proposal as a reason to reject
You think an alternative and a critique is a proposal?
Yeah.
I would love to
Okay,
discuss
there's
that. Do you think?
Why don't you just say it's like a policy proposal?
What?
A counterplan is like a policy proposal for a reason to reject the affirmative.
Well, why though? Why does it need to be specified as a policy proposal?
Because that's what counterplans are.
Why?
Why? I don't know why, but that's what they are, aren't they?
I don't know. Are all alternatives proposals?
What if you have a critical
I
counterplan?
just feel like there
What? first theory article on alternatives for counterplans, and the analogy that I used was, alternatives for critiques, and the analogy I used was counterplan competition.
So an alt is a counterplan?
What?
An alt is a counterplan?
Absolutely
Yes.
not. Absolutely not.
What's an
Because that's an advocated policy option. It has all kinds of problematics, like what's its status and what's its competition and things like that. An alternative is just a suggestion.
Can't it be like some sort of policy advocacy?
Do what?
Like, can't you advocate some sort of policy alternative within a critical alternative? I
Yeah,
mean,
it'd be
it
your
usually
critical
considered.
You
like
could,
a
sure.
day.
And you can also use a counterplan that has a critical net benefit.
I wouldn't necessarily.
You can do that. Those things are true, for sure.
I just wondered.
I don't know. I honestly haven't really thought about it. I'm not sure every alternative to a critique is a proposal. I'm thinking of some critiques of the ways of thinking
Yeah.
that are
I was
not
gonna say
actually
that.
proposals. Like, I'm not sure exactly what you're doing with it, but I've heard Nietzschean arguments where the alternative couldn't be described as a proposal, or rather to describe it as a proposal might be violent language to describe that particular proposal. But the idea, the similarity is it has to be a reason to reject the affirmative, right? But that's true of lots of negative arguments, like the disadvantage is a reason to reject the affirmative.
It's also a proposal.
It's also a proposal? I'm not sure. Is it in every case?
Well, I mean, any argument you make that's saying reject the negative is a proposal. Or, I mean, when you're on negative and you're saying, like, reject the affirmative, that's a proposal to reject the affirmative.
Yeah, but it's not proposal, which is a reason to reject the affirmative. The proposal is to reject the affirmative.
Well, your reason is just like it weren't.
Is every alternative a proposal? This is a great question. I think I'm not sure on this. I want to think about it some more.
I just felt like your definition of a counterplan was vague.
Yeah,
Well,
I think it's incredibly
I'm
accurate.
over here.
okay,
Yes, I'm
you
with
go
you.
first.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
Jump
I
right in.
guess the alternative is a proposal, but it's a different type of proposal.
Different
Like,
type.
counterplan would be like a physical, actual, like, political proposal that you do in the real world, like, in policy making world. But I think a critique, my definition of critique alternative is an alternative way of living your life, a different way you choose to live your life, a different way you choose to think. Like, outside, like, I choose to think this way. I agree with the way the critique proposes the way I should think, because this way of thinking is way more superior than the firm's way of thinking, or this way of living my life is way more superior than the firm's way of living their life.
But
That's my definition of alternative,
Like-
different way of living your life.
like on another aspect, off of what he said, not you can just point you out. Okay. With the whole aspect of proposal, it's the same thing as saying in life you always have an option, because even when you die by getting nuked, quote unquote, you have the option to blink or not blink. So he's taken it to a so critical level that it makes everything acceptable to his criteria, but we need some limitation to the argument, or else there will be no opposite of what's not, because it's more so to say that you actually, a proposal where you actually do something, and a proposal where you actually choose not to do something should be the limitation to what's a proposal and what's not.
Victoria, going back to what you said, what if they said that living is not good?
And that's an alternative way of not living. Like, it's an alternative way of living your life and not living. So I'm gonna continue to live this round and go like not live.
That is another way.
It's not living. I guess you can say not living is a way of living.
Sometimes the alternative is using your ballot to endorse something. Is that a way of living?
Yeah.
Well, I've signed my ballot in favor of a lot of those things, and I did not change my way of living.
It's okay, because they don't have to change your way of living. The affirmative just has to change the way they answer your. The only thing the affirmative has to do is understand your argument. Once they understand your argument, that's still some type of like solvency after the round. They have to read your critique. They have to choose to be like, oh well, this team beat me, so I have to find a way to break down this critique and make better answers to it. Making better answers to it allows you to understand it. And even if you don't choose that way of living, you still choose that. You still end up subconsciously choosing that way of thinking, because you have to understand what they're saying.
Well, to that aspect.
Or you can just reject it even more.
Like-
It's been proven that the stronger you are against something, the stronger the
But
other person is also
that's still
going to be.
that's still a way of living as well, because you're choosing to say no to things. You're
But-
choosing to go on your life just be like no, dude. It's like saying no to drugs or something. Like I choose to say no to drugs, the same way I choose to say no to the affirmative.
But how
Like it's a way of living your life. It's still a way of living your life. It all comes back to
Okay,
it.
But
But you're taking like a transcendental view of how we would approach these things, right? You're saying that the judge, by voting for a no to the app in one instance, will change their entire life for all time, but every single time they're faced with a decision like that, they will have the possibility of making a different decision. So, like, it's not a way of living, it's a way of making a decision at one point in time. Yes, there might be a K that says you should live a certain way, but there are also Ks like the Rodriguez K, who say we should pretend like we're dismantling the U.S. because that dismantles the power structures around using the U.S. federal government. There are alternatives that say we should just change the way we look at the world, or even just think about looking at the world differently. And that's not changing your way of life. That's just looking through someone else's glasses for a few seconds.
That's still I consider changing your way of thinking is changing the way you're living. Because I think thoughts are so powerful that can change the way you act, even if it might not happen immediately. Like, because you think about it so much, you might end up actually doing what you're thinking.
So
I'm not saying it's going to happen right away. I'm just going to say that after a while thinking about it, it might actually happen.
So what I'm saying here is that, again, just like his thing about his thing about proposals and my analogy about questions, you're saying that everything you do is a choice, and that's true, because every choice you make changes your life slightly. If you walk left on your way to school, if you walk right on your way to school, you may still get to school in the end, but your life has changed ultimately because you waited 5 seconds or you saved 5 seconds on your way to school. So that in itself will always come out right, but that's why you need limitations. Just to go back a little bit to theory.
Are you arguing with me?
No, I'm saying, it's like, that's why you kind of need limitations to actually get any education, because all you're basically saying is a blunt statement that links to everything. Everything in life is a choice. Everything in life affects you. If so, that means everything, even the ads and even diss ads, have solvency on a critical level, because when you vote for that diss ad, now the guy's like, oh, I hate fiscal, but fiscal's kind of right, so I'm going to start changing my mindset. So that means anything you do has a critical aspect, so we need limitations to that as well.
I think that's, I'm not saying you're wrong about that. I'm just saying that the way a critique is formed is saying that my version of thinking and my version of living my life is better than what the affirmative has.
Yeah, but what about the anarchy counterplan? I mean, that's a different version of living your life. You can just say anarchy, and there's also anarchy alternatives to CAT-K. Like, that would be the same
Decisions is also a way of living. It all comes back to a way you choose of living.
But at the
Which
same
is
time,
anarchy, and that could be.
but at the same time, it's still just a battle of perceptions, and that's why we need limitations to understand what perceptions are out of bounds, because nonetheless, they're just a way to abuse the round and win.
Are you saying that my interpretation of it is abusive?
I'm saying that your interpretation of changing and change ultimately abuses the whole debate subject, because it makes it as though if I say, let's change our life so that we want to be alive, well, there's going to be few people who don't say no. But if you link it down to certain things, like let's change to see who needs capitalism and who doesn't need capitalism, like we have limitations like that, that actually makes it in-round education. So I'm not saying that your definition is wrong, I'm just saying it's so vague that it makes anything possible, which makes even the bad things of life possible, which makes the round bad in itself, because the education is not pure.
I don't know what you mean by pure education. Like, if someone right now.
That's on the subject, that's in the resolution.
Oh, he's saying that I'm making it so vague to the point where I'm making the subject go away, like the initial subject of the round go away, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but then you just gain more education. Like, if we're not talking about the
Necessarily, if you've heard the word Virilio once in your life because this guy ran it, and then you've heard the resolution once in your life because the guy ran it in that one round, you never really truly learned. You just know words. If you don't know the definition behind the words, which is the death argument, then you don't truly know how to use those words. You don't truly know how to use the words.
Well, if you want to win a round, you have to find out a definition.
Yeah, but everything's based off.
But if you want to, but at the same time, that's so much work to do, because you say, oh, I'm just going to go out there and learn every word someone's setting around.
If that's your argument, which round do you think you're going to learn more? Which round do you think you're going to remember more? Perfectly fair one, or one where they contradicted themselves so many times and you got so mad.
Exactly, you have to keep thinking about it.
But think of this, which one will you learn more from? Not remember, because you remember as in grudge things that piss you off. So if you ran Virilio and I was like, I don't know what Virilio is, I just heard it once in my life, I'm going to be so pissed at you. But if we have a proper discussion about fiscal discipline versus spending more, I'm going to understand that if I deficit spend, I might kill myself, but if I don't deficit spend,
that's not an actual realistic way of learning anyway.
The idea that you're espousing, Victoria, actually, if you're putting it forward as a judging paradigm or a vision of debate, then
That's
the
why,
question,
sorry.
yeah, absolutely, I'm agreeing with you. The questions that you're raising that are in this discussion, they seem to be rather secondary. Like the question of what makes a good judging paradigm is not, I agree or I disagree, it's, is it fair for both sides? So is there something about this idea that the decision the judge renders is their decision for a way of life? Is that what you said? I don't mean that. Is that
But
accurate?
an alternative is choosing the way you live your life.
Okay. And the thing about that is it decides not only debates with the criticism, but also policy debates as well, right? So if that's your framework for making a decision, is there anything wrong about, is there anything that violates any of the theory arguments that we talked about? It seems like it's fair for both sides, is it not? So what are the other standards that we would use to evaluate not an individual argument, but an entire way of viewing the debate? In other words, what are the keys to winning a framework discussion? One of them I gave you. One of them is, it has to be fair for both sides. There has to be balance, because we believe that debate is balanced.
What if
Right.
life is balanced, so we don't need rules? I'm joking. I'm just screwing with everyone.
I mean, I actually kind of don't agree with that. Because a fair game is, let's put 20 quarters on a desk, we'll each take one until there are none left. That's completely fair, but that's not any fun because it's so fair.
But
If something's too fair, like you could have something be perfectly fair, but that doesn't make it fun. What makes it fun is you trying to tip the balance to your favor so that you can win.
Isn't that always
But-
great chaos?
was
So you're
basically
not saying that it's not, the first part of your argument about, did you say quarters?
Yeah, like if you have 20 quarters on a desk,
The thing with quarters though, it's not, that's not to say that fairness isn't important. What you're basically saying there is fairness may be necessary, but not sufficient to
Well, yeah.
produce a good game. But that's one argument that you made, and I know you cleverly tried to attach that to an unfairness actually makes the game more fun. So let's interrogate the second part of that, not just the first part. I totally agree with you that fairness is necessary but not sufficient to create a debate. You have to have something in there that produces, whether it's fairness or the illusion of fairness. Let's talk about that. But it may be something that's important to the game, but not enough to create the game itself. Now, the second part you said, no. What makes the game interesting and fun is the imbalance, right?
yeah.
Okay, hit it with that.
What about it?
You're saying fairness doesn't produce good debate. Unfairness actually produces good debate.
Yeah, I actually
This
think
is the point
that.
where someone in the room says, if it's always unfair to me, I just quit.
Well,
Go, oh, that sucks.
here's one thing you could say though.
Right? Isn't that how these debates go?
Yeah, but
Here's one thing you could say though. Like in a world where you say tipping the scale is fun, what if it's like you're actually physically tipping the scale and you go against some guy who's been working out for 80 years and you just can't tip it back? So what I'm basically saying is everyone loves to have an advantage, but no one loves to get fucked over by the other guy's advantage. I'm on camera.
How many years? How many years?
80 years.
You've been working out for 80 years? Probably not that hard. You've been working out for 80 years.
Alright, let me use this analogy and try to use it against himself.
Okay. Oh,
Alright?
I like this. I like playing with analogy. Go
Sorry.
ahead. No, I love it. I love it.
Technically, the analogy he made isn't necessarily fairness, it's competition that makes it fun. Alright? Unfairness doesn't make debate fun, competition makes it fun. They still have the equal amount of opportunity to get to the coins, to see who gets as many coins on their side. And you could look at the coins as arguments, who gets as many arguments on their side, who gets as many impacts on their side. It's not necessarily like the who has more coins, that's unfair. It's the fact that who is faster would be first. Stop whispering. I feel like, I don't know, I feel weird. Okay, so,
we're conspiring actually.
Really?
sorry.
I heard them. They said they're
So-
gonna kill you.
It's not, so it's like the fact they both have the equal opportunity to go up there and do whatever they can in order to win the round, that's what makes it fair.
Okay.
They both have the equal opportunity, but it's who ends up winning is what makes it competitive and what makes it fun.
competitive equity.
Compelling case, the competition supersedes the imbalance in order to have, would there still be competition if it was unfair?
Well,
It would be unfair competition, but
Exactly.
it would be, let me see,
You said
it wouldn't
yes.
be as interesting, it wouldn't be as fun, because if you're going against someone at your level, then it's way harder to beat them. But if you're going against someone who's a novice and you're like debating for 20 freaking years and you're obviously gonna win, it's gonna be boring.
so like to basically simplify what what she says in my point of view is that competitive equity is what's key, but not actual fairness. Because
Do what?
Com-
All I heard was something, man. Which, by the way, is the name of my superhero alter ego.
Really? No, I was asking why was
That's
there
why I
why-
perked up. 'cause
I was
it's
actually
like-
asking why is there nothing rather than something? It's
Oh
not
my
what we
God,
are
that's that
starting
question.
to
Don't
watch.
even go there.
Is that a reference?
Nothing is something, but nothing else. Just leave it at that.
Okay, that's my guy.
That is where it gets a little bit too strange.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, what I was saying was competitive equity is key, but not necessarily fairness, because the complaint is that fairness and balance may ruin competitive equity, but when it's like a guy who's been debating for 20 years, like you said, and a guy and me who just starts off, I would like for the competitive equity to be fair, but I wouldn't like total fairness because he demolished me.
Okay. Well, since we started and people have started to come out of their shells a little bit, when I asked the first general question, what defines policy debate, you got as far as the resolution, and I said, what's the goal of the resolution? And didn't really get very far on that. So if I ask the question, why do you debate? What's your answer to that question? Because that seems to be the heart of this.
It would mean we all want to answer the no one. Yeah.
I'll answer. I debate to be competitive. I like competition. Yeah, I like competition.
That's why you like no fairness stuff. It makes sense.
Yeah, to win. Yeah. I mean, I'm not
It
going to
makes
debate to
sense.
lose. I don't know anyone who would.
Competition is a very
Education.
nice aspect of debate.
I didn't come to.
I can't hear it, I'm sure. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Competition is a very nice aspect of debate, but I also debate like just to learn about people's views and like to also learn about just education in general. And yeah, just educate myself.
So education is a purpose of it for you? Education is a purpose of debate for you?
It's one of the main purposes of debate, definitely.
I guess one comment you can make on that is that if you prioritize education as a value in debate, then there is no reason for the judge to vote, because you might as well just have a bye, because each of the sides provide education, or you have, the judge votes on who provides better education.
At the same
I
time,
didn't mean education is the only thing.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah.
but at the same time, you completely demolish education in yourself in your argument, because you say, oh, if I can't get exactly what I want nothing at all. So that's
No.
Huh? Do what, I'm sorry?
Education.
yeah, no. I was about to get on that. Thank you. That's a good word. You should say this out loud. Speak up.
Oh my God, Ellie, just leave her alone. Stop scaring her.
So why do you debate, Lydia?
Yeah.
Well, one, my brother did it. Two, I don't really know. Just like, I know the people in it. It's interesting.
Okay.
For the socialization aspect.
Definitely.
You met me? Come
Oh my
on.
God, Ellie, just leave her alone.
Still say that the main like goal of debate is to have the judge sign the ballot at the end of the round.
But that's not why you debate, is it?
Wait.
Not, I mean,
I'm sorry.
I was trying to debate.
It still sounds like legit.
So,
the question of why you debate can be framed in various ways, because like why you debate can be like viewed as a historical process. Like I thought debate was cool. My mom thought I should do debate and things like that. But
I like that answer too.
I mean, framed as debate itself in a vacuum, basically it's two people trying to get the judge to sign the ballot for them.
Yeah.
oh wait.
Go ahead.
So like, this is like my own private thought. I remember one time I was just bored thinking,
Uh-huh.
and like I found like debate as a check. Yeah, she does it all the time. So I find debate as a check and balance, as in its education, which is checked as in its actual pure education by competitiveness, which is checked as actual competitiveness by fairness, and this fairness is checked by socialization, which at the same time checks is checked by education, because you're not really you're not really competitive if it's not fair, and if it's fair, then you truly socialize, and if you truly socialize, you truly educate yourself, and you truly educate yourself, you truly wish to compete. off of your education.
I'd kind of challenge that. I mean, you don't need to socialize to educate yourself. Plenty of people probably just would sit like in a library all day and reading by themselves. They're getting tons more education than probably even we are without socializing.
But the same thing though, in a world where you want each part of the check and balance, then debate is a key factor because it gives you all four. It's like an ice cream with 4 toppings. It's better than that guy who has a lot of the vanilla. You may like vanilla, but we got chocolate and vanilla.
That makes sense.
You're not arguing that one is necessarily sufficient. You're arguing that the extremes of one focus going out of bounds are reined in by another goal in debate. So this is very complex, like the way that government works.
Yeah.
So let the executive
Let me
branch
remind
like
you all of the board,
education.
alright?
Do what?
Let me remind you all of the board when I came up with this.
I'm very interested in this. This is an interesting idea. So like the reason that education is a goal debate, but education could go out of bounds. We could become only interested in the educational side. That's checked by
Competitiveness.
competition.
As in you make sure, I know, it's checked in by like social, not the way, it's checked in by competitiveness.
That's okay.
So if there's too much, if there's no education,
That's okay.
if there's no education,
Yeah.
then it's all competitiveness. But if it's
And
all
the thing that prevents us from being hyper-competitive is
fairness, as in no guy's gonna come in saying, I'm gonna run 90 off, which is 1 page east, and then I'm just gonna drop all but the one you didn't read about. So that checks itself because they say, oh, you gotta do this and that, theory, the fairness aspect.
Well,
But 90
time
off is
constraints should
educational.
handle that.
Huh?
Time constraints themselves should handle that.
But time constraint in itself is a fairness claim because you only get 8 minutes.
But 90 off is educational.
Same reason why.
But it's not as educational because you're more on the competitive side because you don't let them learn about everything, but you let them learn about the one thing you win on. But they don't really learn on it because they didn't read any off or anything.
That's open for debate though, right?
Yeah, but it's kind of
I
not
can
just
say learning a little bit about a lot of issues is better, right? That's open to
like
debate, right?
it's like the breadth versus depth
Yes.
argument.
Yes.
That's what this is right now.
Yes.
But what I say is breadth is good,
Yeah.
but all breadth and no depth is bad. All depth and no breadth is bad. You need a balance.
Right. But I can usher forth reasons. If it's open for debate, then it can't be something that's constrained in debate,
Of course.
right? I thought you were going to say like the social aspect prevents hyper-competitiveness.
So I mean like that too. But I'm trying to say like competitiveness doesn't happen to the extreme as we're only being competitive because the fairness constraints as in you only get 8 minutes, you gotta make sure you explain why.
Okay.
And then this fairness aspect, when the opponent's being fair, that shows how you socialize with your opponents and like after round the fairness handshake, that's also socialization in itself.
Yes.
And when socialization is good
Uh-huh.
and it's nice and balanced,
Yep.
it's a good way to get education in round. Because if there was no socialization, then you wouldn't truly be learning anything. Like
Yeah.
end round saying,
And
oh, what was that Virilio about? That kind of hurt me.
yeah, it's very intriguing. And I just want to be clear: is there a fourth check and balance? Is it 3 or 4?
It's 4 things. It's fairness, education, competitiveness, socialization. Thank you.
Socialization, fairness, education, and competition. Is that right?
The question is still why we debate, right?
He's saying there are 4 reasons, and they're in a particular balance.
Okay, this has just got all over the place, and I'm like, I don't understand how we separate all of this.
I'm sorry.
Well, it's a nice approach because, of course, the devil in my details is anytime you identify one reason, I can always pick it apart. But providing multiple reasons at once that interact with one another, that's an entire narrative. It's like a strategy. It's got like a strategy to answer the question.
Are you trying to like help me
Just playing devil's advocate.
No, I want to write down some of those here.
Okay, socialization is fairness, education.
Education, there you go. Can't believe I missed that one.
You forgot education?
Yeah.
That's pretty stupid.
I think you should write that up, Ali.
I already wrote it up.
You should write it up and publish it.
I mean, like, I want to take philosophy in college, but necessarily, I feel as though when I really get down into my core goals in life, like, oh yeah, I want to be a philosopher. I read someone's book and they say the exact same things I thought. I'm like, it's already published. So that's why I was.
Basically everything, and this way you just said was new to him.
Yeah, I don't know, you can't think of anybody that's, the checks and balances idea.
I could write a debate book. Yeah.
I don't know if you have enough room for